I accidentally discovered an explicit video of my fiancé cheating. In the video, Willow and Makoto were on top of each other. At the most intense moment, Makoto mischievously asked her, "Come on, tell me, who's better, me or your husband?" Before I could react, I heard Willow say, "Of course, it's you. I'm willing to have your child." I was burning with anger. I confronted Willow face to face, but she calmly replied, "Although I promised him I'd have his child, I also told him that I will only bear your child. The most I'd do is act as a surrogate for him. That's my bottom line." I was speechless and said, "So, I should thank you then." Chapter 1. Mr. Wong, are you really going to do this? Listening to the hesitant voice of my assistant on the phone, I held the phone calmly. I said, "Yes, please go ahead with it. Arrange a new identity for me in a month, so I can disappear and leave without a trace after faking my death." The assistant hesitated but still couldn't hold back. "Mr. Wong, if Miss Liu finds out, she will definitely be heartbroken. You and Miss Liu have been in a long-term relationship for so many years. Do you really have to go this far?" When the assistant mentioned Willow Liu, a self-deprecating smile appeared on my lips. I said, "I'll handle things on her side. Just make sure you get this done. And don't tell anyone." Understood. Although the assistant didn't understand why I was doing this, he still agreed and hung up. I stared at the phone screen. And just then, a trending post on Weibo caught my eye. Heiress of Liu Corporation spends a fortune to buy the entire Love Island in her husband's name. I swiped and gently tapped the link. In the video, Willow, dressed in a high-end gown, with a beautiful face like March peaches, was smiling at the camera while introducing the current projects Liu Corporation is focusing on. She said, "This island has an excellent location and a pleasant climate. We plan to develop it into a natural resort and wellness destination. Once the project begins, the island will officially be renamed George Island, in honor of my husband, Mr. George." If this were the past, I would have been deeply moved by this video. But now, I only feel a sense of sarcasm. The comment section had already exploded, with everyone envying me for having such a wonderful wife. Someone commented, "Oh my God, I heard that CEO Liu and her husband have known each other for more than 10 years. This kind of story I've only read in novels. See, hanging on to a rich woman really lets you skip 50 years of hard work. When will I meet a female CEO who's this generous? I envy CEO Liu's husband so much. What kind of virtue did he accumulate in his past life to have such a good wife? CEO Liu is so good to her husband. Buying an island is nothing. I remember last Valentine's Day, CEO Liu even rented out all the drones in the city, just to put on a drone performance for her husband. Through the screen, I could almost see their envious faces. I quickly scanned through the comments, but the bitterness in my heart began to spread. Yes, everyone knows Willow loves me. She fell for me at first sight in high school and pursued me relentlessly for 3 years. I was born poor, growing up in an orphanage, and only managed to study through hard work and scholarships. To outsiders, apart from my excellent grades and decent looks, I was from a completely different world than this young lady from the Liu family. But Willow Liu didn't care about the rumors outside. She knew about my hardships and set up a scholarship and social funds just for me, so I could focus on my studies. She even rented a special cafeteria window just for me, so I could eat extra meals to improve my health. For 3 years of high school, everyone knew how openly Willow loved me. Even when I sat in the classroom memorizing, I could feel the constant attention on me. For Willow, these were just small gestures, but to me, they were kindnesses I might never repay. So I kept trying to refuse, even though everyone thought I didn't know how to appreciate it. I didn't want to owe Willow so much, but Willow didn't give up. She took part of the money from her foundation and donated it to the orphanage I grew up in, promising that as long as the children from the orphanage wanted to study, the foundation would support them. I could endure hardship, but I couldn't take away the children's right to an education. To thank Willow, I started tutoring her. And over time, through constant contact, I gradually developed a hazy affection for this willful young lady. But our backgrounds were too different, and I never dared to take that step. After the college entrance exam, thanks to my tutoring, Willow and I both managed to get into the same university. She still pursued me openly and boldly, whether it was the special cafeteria window or the grand and elaborate celebrations on my birthday. All of it was a public declaration of her love, but such special treatment always aroused jealousy in others. And during a study trip organized by the school, I was pushed off a cliff by one of Willow's suitors, and fell, breaking my leg in the foggy mountains. My phone had no signal, and my backpack was lost during the fall. If no one came to rescue me, I would have just waited to die. At the moment of my despair, a tall, slender figure broke through the fog, stumbling over to my side. That night, I finally agreed to Willow's confession. Faced with a girl who was willing to come alone to rescue me, I could no longer refuse her. Chapter 2. This incident caused a sensation in school, and the story of the Liu family's young lady, a beautiful heroine rescuing the hero, became the talk of the town. Everyone was moved by Willow's love for me, and some even asked me for advice on how to find such a wealthy, beautiful, and devoted woman. I had once thought that I had found the most sincere and touching love in the world. To make myself worthy of Willow, I immersed myself in my studies, winning numerous awards and quickly entering the city's research institute at a young age, becoming the youngest rising star in scientific research. Over the years, I gave my all to Willow, doing everything I could to give her the best, even to better take care of her. I gave up my chance to go to City A for further studies, and chose to stay in South City to be with her. At that time, I thought we could be together like this until we grew old, until one day, I accidentally discovered Willow's affair, and her affair partner was none other than the man who had pushed me off the cliff, and had secretly orchestrated the bullying that almost cost me my life. When the truth was right in front of me, it felt like my heart was being ripped apart by something forcefully. I didn't want to believe any of it. Even thought maybe Willow had been forced, but when I saw the video from the dashcam, I had no choice but to accept this painful reality. The woman I was willing to protect with my life had betrayed our vows. Since that's the case, I had no choice but to leave. All the past kept flashing in my mind. I closed my phone and, in a self-destructive manner, opened the video that proved Willow's affair once more. When I first discovered this video, I had been so emotional that I only saw them kissing and quickly shut off the computer. This time, when I opened it again, I thought I was ready to leave Willow, and maybe my emotions would be calmer. But when I clearly saw the face of the man Willow was kissing, my breath became uncontrollably rapid. I would never forget that face, the man who bullied me, the one who almost caused me to die on that cliff, Makoto. My heart was pounding, and I forced myself to calm down, pressing myself to watch the rest of the video. Willow, I just want you to give me a child. We've known each other since childhood, and if you give me a child, I'll never bother you again. In the video, Makoto's voice was full of pleading, his eyes bloodshot. I've loved you for so many years. Can't you give me a child? Willow fell silent. My heart was in my throat. After a long time, Willow finally spoke slowly. I can give you a child. In that moment, I felt like my mind was buzzing, and all the sounds around me seemed to disappear. I gasped for air, feeling dizzy. Willow agreeing to give him a child meant that before I could think of the worst, I heard Willow's voice in the video. I can give you a child, but I won't carry him. We can do IVF. And how to arrange it is up to you. Makoto clung to Willow's arm, still trying to plead. But Willow's expression had already turned cold. This is my greatest concession. I will only bear George's child. That is my bottom line. Listening to Willow's words, I felt no joy in my heart. If she refused to carry the child but still planned to give Makoto one, that could only mean surrogacy or some other technological means. But surrogacy is illegal. I couldn't accept my wife having a child for someone else. And I couldn't accept Willow crossing the boundaries of the law. In my emotional state, I felt a sharp pain in my heart, my chest rising and falling as if I couldn't breathe. When the video ended, I closed the computer in a flurry, and just as I was about to go back to my room to lie down and rest, my vision suddenly darkened, and I collapsed to the ground. I lost consciousness, and after what felt like a long time, I slowly opened my eyes. George, you're awake. How do you feel? The familiar voice, filled with the same concern, made me slowly turn my head. I met Willow's worried eyes. When she saw that I had woken up, a smile finally appeared on her pale face. Her eyes were slightly red, and she pressed my hand to her cheek, her voice choked with emotion. You scared me so much, do you know that? I came home and saw you collapsed on the floor, and you didn't wake up for an entire night. If it weren't for the doctor saying you just fainted from emotional stress and that you just need to rest, I don't know how I would have made it through. She cried as she spoke, looking like a cat almost abandoned. She said, what happened to you? Why did you suddenly faint? Why didn't you tell me? Chapter 3. I looked at Willow, my mind in a daze. A damp sensation spread through my palm. Willow's tears were burning hot, yet my heart felt nothing but coldness. Facing her warmth and concern, I would be lying if I said I wasn't moved. From high school to graduation, we had been together for a full 10 years. 10 years of feelings. How could they be so easily let go? Even knowing that Willow had cheated, seeing her cry still made my heart ache uncontrollably. I'm fine. My voice was hoarse as I spoke slowly. Isn't the company really busy? You suddenly rushed back to stay with me, aren't you worried? Willow wiped away her tears and shot me a reproachful glance, saying, no matter how important work is, it's not more important than you. Honey, I can't live without you. Once I'm done with things, we'll go on vacation to George Island. I specially had that island built for you. You'll love it." As she spoke, Willow carefully picked up the warm bowl of porridge on the table and began feeding me. The love in her eyes was so intense, so genuine. I couldn't imagine how a woman, so deeply in love with me, could turn around and lie with another man. My eyes grew vacant, and after a long pause, I slowly spoke to Willow. "I have something to ask you. You must tell me the truth." Perhaps my fragile appearance made Willow uneasy, a sense of worry creeping into her heart. "What is it, George?" I opened my mouth, about to ask her if she was really with Makoto. But before I could finish, Willow's phone rang. "Hello." She pressed the answer button, and after hearing something from the other side, Willow furrowed her brows and turned to look at me apologetically. She said, "Honey, something urgent came up at the company. I have to go handle it. We can talk when I get back." "Okay." I sighed lightly, my words unfinished, swallowed back, and said, "Go ahead." Willow came over and kissed me, her faint citrus scent lingering in my nose. She said, "I'll be back soon." With that, she grabbed her clothes and left the house without looking back. I watched her retreating figure, feeling utterly exhausted. I closed my eyes, and before I knew it, I fell back into a deep sleep. I didn't know how long it had been, but I was startled awake by the sound of my phone ringing. Groggily, I opened my eyes and saw the caller ID displaying "wife." Without thinking, I answered the call. Before I could speak, a voice came through the phone that made my heart race. "Slow down." The woman's voice was seductive, with a faint breathiness, like an enchanting temptress. "I can't wait any longer." The response from the man was a hoarse voice, followed by the sounds of clothes rustling and falling to the ground, followed by soft murmurs. Any man would know exactly what was happening on the other end of the call. I tightened my grip on the phone, and my hand grew cold. I recognized the voices. One was Makoto, and the other was my fiancée, Willow. In that instant, it felt like cold water had been poured over my head, and my once wavering heart became utterly certain. I had to leave. As for the fake death, I'd set the date for our wedding anniversary. Let it be my final gift to Willow. The voices on the phone continued. Willow's voice, hoarse and seductive, was a pleasure I had never heard before. I could almost imagine how Willow was submitting to Makoto, fulfilling his desires. The next moment, a male voice sounded. "Who's better, me or your husband?" Makoto's voice, laced with light laughter and provocation, seemed deliberately intended for me to hear. Willow's tone was light and flirtatious as she cooed. "Of course, it's you." Their conversation felt like a sharp blade, seemingly cutting me apart, piece by piece. My thoughts began to blur, and memories of the time when Makoto led the bullying flashed through my mind. The boys at 18 or 19 are full of youthful vigor. And Makoto, believing I had stolen Willow from him, would often bring his gang to corner me. The beatings and insults were just the beginning. They shoved my head into a toilet and forced me to kneel and bow. I had tried to fight back, but one person couldn't possibly stand against a group. Each time I resisted, the bullying intensified. Until one day, when they went too far, and I ended up in the hospital. That was when the bullying came to light. When Willow Lu found out, she stormed into the principal's office, demanding justice for me. Under the pressure from the Lu family, Makoto and his gang were forced to apologize. After that, my school life finally returned to peace, until that one year in college, when Makoto struck again. After that incident, Willow publicly severed ties with Makoto and promised to send him to prison. Even when the Ito family personally came to plead, Makoto Ito was still detained for 7 days before being released. After many years, Willow had indeed never contacted Makoto again. If it hadn't been for the meeting I accidentally discovered between the two of them 3 months ago, I might still have been kept in the dark. The call had unknowingly ended, and all the humiliation and torment I had suffered played on a loop in my mind. I felt disoriented, my chest heaving, my breath growing shallow and rapid. Realizing something was wrong, I struggled to get up and look for medicine. But after taking just a few steps, my vision went black, and I collapsed to the ground. Chapter 4. The pain from the lack of oxygen in my brain made me curl up on the floor. With the little consciousness I had left, I instinctively activated the emergency feature on my watch. This watch was connected to Willow's phone, a gift from her after the cliff accident, so that she could ensure my safety at all times. At that moment, Willow was with Makoto, tangled in an intimate embrace. And just as their passion reached its peak, the phone rang. She recognized it as the exclusive ringtone she had set for George and quickly sat up to answer. But Makoto stopped her hand. Willow said, "Let go." Willow furrowed her brows, but Makoto hugged her from behind, his voice hoarse. "It's midnight. What could be so important? Besides, George is calling you in the middle of the night. What else would he be asking but where you are?" As he spoke, he held her in his arms, pressing her hand against his chiseled abs, saying, "Besides, Are you really willing to leave? The feel of his muscles made Willow's frown soften. She pursed her lips, wanting to say something, but Makoto had already tossed the phone aside. The two embraced and fell onto the bed, lost in the moment, with no one caring when the phone's ringtone stopped. When I regained consciousness, the smell of disinfectant filled my nostrils. I slowly opened my eyes and scanned the room, only to see white everywhere. Sir, you're finally awake. Following the voice, I saw the housekeeper sitting beside me, holding a warm bowl of porridge. She said, when I went to clean your house, I found you lying on the floor, unable to wake up no matter how much I called. I was so scared. The housekeeper placed the porridge on a nearby cabinet. Still looking nervous, I called an ambulance. I wanted to contact your wife, but I couldn't get through to her. I've already paid for the medical expenses. The housekeeper seemed a bit awkward, almost apologetic. I moved my lips and, in a hoarse voice, said, thank you so much. I'll transfer the money to you later. Hearing this, the housekeeper visibly relaxed. She took the porridge out, carefully fed me a spoonful, and sighed. Your wife really should make more time for home. No matter how busy work is. She couldn't even answer the phone. I lowered my gaze and quietly sipped the porridge, giving a self-deprecating smile. Of course, she didn't answer the phone. Someone didn't want to take it, and I had a good idea who that someone was. Thankfully, after all this, I had finally let go of Willow. This time, I had fainted from a lack of oxygen caused by my emotions. Luckily, the housekeeper acted quickly and I didn't suffer any lasting side effects. After a day of rest at the hospital, I went home, expecting the house to be empty. But as soon as I opened the door, I was greeted by an unexpected visitor. Makoto was standing in the middle of the living room, staring at the wedding photo on the wall with a mocking expression. Hearing the door open, he turned and looked at me, his face dark, and immediately challenged me. Long time no see. George, you've done quite well for yourself these years, climbing up to the Liu family. You must be really proud. Huh. I ignored him, frowning, and only spoke once I was sure Willow wasn't around. You're trespassing. Breaking into private property is illegal. Makoto grinned maliciously. I'm just here to pick up something for Willow. After all, your wedding house is just for show now. Nothing is ready inside, and Willow finds it inconvenient to use. I stared in disbelief, unable to process what I was hearing. I gritted my teeth and demanded, what did you just say? Although Willow and I had lived in this villa for years, the wedding house was a flat I bought outright for our marriage. Willow said we would leave that place for our children in the future as a testament to our love. So even though we didn't live there, I made sure to have it maintained regularly. I never imagined Willow would bring Makoto there. Just thinking about them being together in that house made me feel disgusted. But Makoto wasn't done yet. He walked up to me, pulled out a stack of photos from his jacket, and threw them in my face. He said, you really think you can keep Willow just because you married her? Look at these photos. She's only satisfied when she's with me. And you're nothing but a useless man who can't give her anything. Chapter 5. The photos clearly displayed moments of their intimate encounters, with Willow's satisfied expression and posture captured in full detail. In that instant, I felt a rush of blood to my head. An overwhelming anger surged within me. What man could accept this scene? I clenched my fists and swung them at Makoto with all my might. Makoto took a small step back and easily dodged my punch. I'll fight you. I tried to continue, but the result was a punch from Makoto, followed by a swift kick that knocked me to the ground. I had been drained mentally and physically these past few days, and my body had been deteriorating. On top of that, Makoto was big and strong. There was no way I could compete with him. I tried to fight back again, but Makoto stepped on me, forcing me down to the ground. George, listen carefully. A useless man should act like a useless man. Stop dreaming of a toad eating swan meat. I heard that your wedding anniversary is in a month. I'll give you a month. Either you propose a divorce, or you'll regret it. Get as far away as possible. This is your last chance. If you don't get it, I'll make sure you won't even know how you died. Try me. With that, he walked out. And before leaving, he waved his hand, saying, here are the photos. If they're not enough, let me know. I have plenty more. Haha. I dug my fingers into my flesh, and the fire of vengeance reached its peak. I returned to my room, ripped all the photos to shreds, and threw them into the fire, as if bidding farewell to the past. At the same time, my determination solidified. I wanted not only to escape, but to take revenge and uncover the truth. That afternoon, Willow finally returned, as gentle and sweet as ever. She said, George, I'm back. I bought you lots of delicious food. Come eat. When she saw the bruises on my face, her expression changed dramatically. George, what happened to your face? How did this happen? Let me see. In the face of Willow's concern, I felt disgusted, yet I still forced a smile. I said, it's nothing, just a little fall. How could you fall like this? Let me take you to the hospital. No need. I've already applied ice. No, we must go to the hospital. Right now. Willow grabbed my hand. But I instinctively shook it off. Not because I didn't care. But simply because I couldn't stand it. I said, really, it's fine. I'm fine. And I don't have time to go to the hospital. Willow frowned slightly. No time. What do you mean? I forced another smile and said, I'm planning something for our wedding anniversary next month. I want to make sure you'll never forget it. A fleeting moment of guilt flashed in Willow's eyes. But it quickly disappeared. She said, all right, then I'll wait and see. By then, I'll be the happiest woman in the world. The following month. On the surface, I pretended to prepare for our anniversary, treating Willow with tenderness as always, but in reality, I was repeatedly checking the steps for my staged death. I needed to ensure there were no mistakes, because only then would I be able to get what I wanted. 3 days before the anniversary, I went to see my assistant again. Everything's ready, right? The assistant nodded firmly. Don't worry, Mr. Wong. Everything is prepared. According to the plan, CEO Liu will be waiting for you at the venue on the shore. And your ship will encounter an accident along the way. I've prepared the bloody clothes as well, ensuring everything is foolproof. Your new identity has already been set up. And the background is completely clean. No one will suspect you. I nodded and said, that's good. I'll give you a sum of money for your trouble as a thank you fee. The assistant shook his head repeatedly. No, I have just one request. Speak. I hope to stay with Mr. Wong from now on. Wherever you go, I go. I frowned slightly. Stay with me. Are you sure? I don't even know what will happen next. Don't want to hold you back. The assistant's face was filled with determination. No, I'm not afraid. As long as I can stay with Mr. Wong, I'll do anything you ask. I've learned so much from being with you these years. To me, you are both my teacher and my big brother. I just hope to stay by your side from now on. Since he had said it so firmly, I could only nod in agreement. All right. Chapter 6. 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. The night before, Willow had tried on several luxurious gowns, each worth a fortune, dazzling and radiant. With her tall figure and delicate beauty, she looked like a fairy stepping out of a painting. Untouchable. George, what do you think of this one? How about this one? Which one do you like? Looking at the woman in front of me, I felt nothing but coldness inside, utterly indifferent. But at this point, I still forced myself to respond gently. They all look great. You'd look good in anything. Willow laughed joyously, spinning around and throwing herself into my arms. George, you're getting better and better with your words. I adore you so much. Then I'll wear this one. Actually, no matter what I wear, it's all for you. I just want you to see me at my most beautiful. Such words would make any man fall for her. But all I felt was disgust. In fact, I almost wanted to ask, if all your outfits are for me, then who are you undressing for? Surely not for me. Then, Willow took a dazzling golden box. Opening it, inside lay a luxurious custom-made watch, set with 9 gemstones. She said, George, this watch is for you. I had it specially made. The 9 gemstones represent our undying love. It was hard to imagine undying love coming from Willow's mouth. Because to me, it was nothing but laughable. It felt completely shallow. I also brought out the token I had prepared, a seemingly ordinary bracelet. I said, don't let its simplicity fool you. This bracelet is a piece of overseas black technology. It'll only break when I die. As soon as the words left my mouth, Willow immediately covered my mouth with her delicate hand. She looked terrified and said, don't say death. It's bad luck. Then, she stood on tiptoe, ready to give me a passionate kiss. But, as expected, I dodged it. I said, hurry and try on your gown. I need to try mine too. We're running out of time. Watching George leave, Willow felt an indescribable sensation in her heart. The next morning, the entire South City was in an uproar. It turned out that while George was preparing, Willow had also been busy, spending a fortune to create a luxurious venue by the river, with all the major media outlets in attendance. In addition, dozens of drones circled overhead, capturing aerial footage. Everyone envied George, especially the countless otaku. But an hour later, tragic news arrived, marking the end of the wedding anniversary celebration. Chapter 7. Bad news. The ship that Mr. Wong was on has had an accident, and Mr. Wong's fate is unknown. This sentence hit like a thunderclap, instantly shaking the entire venue. Willow didn't waste any time and rushed to the scene of the accident as quickly as she could. What could be seen was the ship's sail drenched by the waves. The hull was covered in water stains, and the railing on one side of the deck had been broken. When she reached the gap, the signs of struggle were clearly visible, along with a blood-stained piece of clothing. These had all been prepared by the assistant beforehand. And as for the blood, it was naturally animal blood purchased from the market. The law enforcement officers had already sealed off the area. But only Willow was allowed inside the restricted zone, holding onto the railing with one hand. She barely supported herself as she was about to collapse. Then burst into uncontrollable sobs. George, how can I live without you? Please come back to me. Today is our wedding anniversary. Don't leave me alone. I beg you. She cried so hard, gasping for breath as though she might faint at any moment. The law enforcement officers could only offer comfort. Ms. Lou, please control your emotions. We will do our best to recover him. Please give us some time. Willow grabbed one of the officers. Please, I beg you, save him. We'll do our best. Don't worry. At that moment, a tall figure stood in the crowd. It was Makoto. Looking at the scene before him, Makoto's lips curled into a faint smile. He chuckled. Not bad. You even thought of ending it yourself. This makes it easier for me. Saves me the trouble. In the following days, law enforcement spared no effort in their search. But the result was nothing but disappointment. When the time surpassed the theoretical survival window, law enforcement had no choice but to announce my death to Willow. Additionally, the bracelet on Willow's wrist had shattered, which further convinced her of my death. In front of reporters and the media, Willow cried uncontrollably, even fainting several times. But when night fell and she was alone, a complex swirl of emotions filled her mind. At that moment, the door was pushed open, and a burly man walked in. Willow, no one will bother us anymore. Now we can live our little life. Willow instinctively turned her face away. In truth, her feelings had always been conflicted. On one hand, she was addicted to Makoto, and on the other, she felt guilty toward George and couldn't let go. It was this emotional struggle that led her to be so gentle with George, even buying an entire island as a form of compensation. Perhaps. Willow pursed her lips and said, George has only just gone, so shouldn't we? Before she could finish her sentence, Makoto moved in close, pressing her down onto the bed. He grinned wickedly. Shouldn't we? Shouldn't we try something new? That annoying guy is gone now. What are you still hesitating for? Do you want me to die too? Willow quickly reached out. Don't say that. Looking closely, her actions seemed oddly familiar. Makoto's smile deepened, and he wrapped his arm around Willow's waist. Before expertly removing her clothes, the room fell into silence. Meanwhile, I had already arrived at the East Market, next door to South City. Although the assistant reported that the staged death had been a success, there was no smile on my face. At that moment, I was staring at the custom watch Willow had given me, which even had the red hearts and signatures of both of them. Mr. Wong, are you all right? The assistant asked cautiously. I waved my hand, signaling him to leave. The assistant understood that I needed some time to myself and left, holding the watch in my hand. I felt a mix of emotions welling up inside me, but whenever I thought of those photos, the fire of vengeance would surge within me once again. This fire wasn't just for Makoto, but for that woman who had hurt me the most. Chapter 8. The next morning, when the assistant arrived at the hotel room, he was surprised to find that I was missing. Wong, Mr. Wong. He searched the room several times but couldn't find any trace of me. This is bad. At the same time, Willow was holding a grand funeral for me. As always, when it came to appearances, Willow always made sure everything was top-notch for me. All the major media outlets and reporters arrived, including some of the most influential business tycoons from South City. To say that this was the largest personal funeral in South City's history wouldn't be an exaggeration. As my widow, Willow was in charge of the funeral, and Makoto was by her side as a friend. After receiving the mourners and friends, Makoto suddenly pulled Willow to a corner. Before Willow could react, Makoto's hands began to wander over her body. He leaned in close, his deep and magnetic voice slowly whispering in her ear. Willow, you look really good in this outfit. It's making me lose control. Looks like tonight we can have some fun with this dress. Willow furrowed her brows. This is a funeral. Don't be inappropriate. It's disrespectful to the deceased. Makoto burst into laughter. Ha. Disrespectful to the deceased. Don't even bother. That guy's body isn't here. And even if it was, I'd still have my fun. He grabbed Willow's hand roughly, and his forceful actions left her unable to move. Soon, Willow started to feel a bit disoriented, even beginning to reciprocate his movements. At that moment, a shout echoed. What do you think you're doing? Both of them froze, quickly turning around to see a man with slightly graying hair. The man wasn't old, but his face and hands were lined with wrinkles, making him seem far older than he looked. Dean. Willow quickly stepped back, nervously adjusting her dress. The newcomer was none other than the head of the orphanage, Sean, and also the person George respected most. Miss Lou, what exactly are you two doing? Willow stammered. Well, before she could finish, Makoto stepped forward, his face full of disdain. What's it to you? Mind your own business. Dog chasing mice. Get lost. Sean's face turned completely cold. He frowned. What kind of language is that? I speak however I want. Got a problem with that? As things were about to escalate, Willow quickly pulled Sean aside. She said, Dean, you've misunderstood. My friend was just talking to me about something. We didn't do anything. My friend's just like that, don't mind him. With that, she hurriedly left, her back full of guilt. In the days that followed, people gradually forgot about me, the top-tier researcher, and even forgot about the vows I had shared with Willow. As for Makoto, not only did he secure a formal partnership between his company and Lu Corporation, but he also swaggered into Willow's villa. And it seemed like everything had settled into place. Chapter 9. But even though everyone had forgotten about me, there was one person who hadn't, my assistant. He searched everywhere for any trace of me, but it was as if I had disappeared into thin air, without a single clue. Mr. Wong, where are you? A month passed in the blink of an eye, and just as the assistant was about to give up, I returned. Seeing me suddenly appear, the assistant's eyes were filled with confusion. He asked, Who are you? Why are you looking for me? No, wait. Why do you seem so familiar? Have we met somewhere? A familiar smile tugged at the corner of my mouth. I said, Tom, have you really forgotten me? Didn't you want to call me Big Brother? How can a brother forget his own big brother? The assistant froze, stepping back 2 paces in terror. No, this can't be. You can't be Mr. Wong. In the past, I had a handsome, refined appearance, with a cool, aloof aura, truly a gentleman. But now, looking at myself, I had put on muscle, my skin had darkened quite a bit, and I wore gold-rimmed glasses, exuding the vibe of a business magnate. If anything had stayed the same, it was probably my deep, unwavering gaze. I smiled faintly and said, There's nothing impossible about it. I just changed my haircut and switched up my wardrobe a bit. The assistant shook his head vigorously. No, no, no. Your body shape doesn't match either. Your arms are at least twice as big now. I laughed and replied, That's not important. If I'm going to start over with a new identity, the changes have to be big, or else I'd look like a clown. It was only after I spoke those secrets that the assistant reluctantly believed me. Mr. Wong, where have you been this month? I was going crazy with worry. Your skin is so much darker now. And your arms, did you go through some intense training? I gave a mysterious smile but didn't elaborate. In truth, it wasn't just intense training. This month, I had pushed myself to an extent that words couldn't even describe, but it was because of this that I had truly undergone a complete transformation. All right, enough about that. Let's get to the real matter. How's everything with Lu Corporation? No one's noticed anything strange, right? The assistant shook his head. No, everything at Lu Corporation is normal, except, I asked, except for what? Except that Lu Corporation has officially established a partnership with Guangming Group. Other than that, nothing unusual. Even without the assistant saying it, I knew that Willow, Lu and Makoto's collaboration was inevitable. In fact, even if I were still around, I wouldn't have been able to stop them. The assistant said, I think you should tell Dean Su about this. I asked, what about the Dean? The assistant reported the events from the funeral truthfully. It turned out that the assistant had gone to the funeral to look for me and just so happened to witness that scene. He said, over these days, Dean Su has been crying constantly, and his health is deteriorating. The most concerning thing is that it seems he's noticed something off between Willow and Makoto. I'm afraid he might do something rash one day. Without saying another word, I immediately called Sean. I knew this Dean's personality too well. Once he had doubts, he would investigate to the end, and the result of such an investigation could very well cause trouble for him, as Makoto would hold a grudge and retaliate. Chapter 10. Dean. There was silence on the other end of the phone. I tentatively spoke again. Dean, are you still there? To be honest, I was really worried I might frighten Sean into doing something rash. Dean, please don't panic. Let me explain everything. It took a lot of effort, but I finally managed to convince him of the truth behind my staged death. However, I didn't tell him about Willow and Makoto, fearing that it might cause unnecessary trouble. Sean, with a face full of confusion, asked, Wait, why would you go through the trouble of faking your death? What are you really after? I sighed softly and replied, Dean, I can't go into specifics, but I have my reasons. Please don't ask any more. Well, all right, I won't ask, but you need to be careful. Willow and her friend seem off. At your funeral, I saw Willow and her friend acting strange. They kept exchanging glances, and they even touched each other. You really need to keep an eye on this. If Willow gets deceived and taken away, you won't even have a place to cry. I smiled bitterly and nodded. I know, I'll be careful, but please, don't spread the word or investigate. I'll handle it. Also, please keep the secret of my staged death, and when the truth needs to come out, everything will be clear. All right. After calming Sean down, I turned to the assistant. All right, we need to get to work. I'll investigate Lu Corporation, and you focus on Guangming Group. Let's see if these two have collaborated before. Remember, the investigation needs to be thorough and discreet. Understood. Just as the assistant was about to leave, I called him back. By the way, don't call me Mr. Wang anymore. From now on, call me Big Brother Chan. The assistant furrowed his brows. Big Brother Chan. Exactly. From now on, my alias is David Chan. After a few days of investigation, we indeed found something fishy. It turned out that the two companies had already formed a partnership years ago. But it had been kept secret. Moreover, many of the projects had serious issues. The assistant spoke up. 3 years ago, the Food City project had huge problems. The compensation the residents received was drastically different from the numbers Lu Corporation had provided. And then there's the pedestrian street. He listed several projects, and the core issue behind each one was clear: greed. In other words, while the two companies appeared to be collaborating, most of the money had ended up in Makoto's pockets. I couldn't help but chuckle bitterly. Really stupid. They sold me out, and now they're counting money for the other side. The assistant hurriedly spoke. Mr. Wang. No. Big Brother Chan, shouldn't we just hand over the evidence to Lu Corporation? Let them sort it out themselves. I waved my hand dismissively. Don't rush it right now. We're not even part of South City's business world. Why would they believe us? Besides, the evidence isn't strong enough yet. We need to refine it more. The assistant nodded thoughtfully. All right, we'll do everything according to Big Brother Chan's plan. I slowly stood up, my eyes sharp, carrying a sense of vengeful satisfaction. I said, it seems we'll need to pay a visit to South City's business world. Let's test the waters and see just how deep this goes. Yes. At that very moment, Makoto had just finished his passionate session with Willow, who was now sound asleep. Content. He got up, took a shower, and walked over to Willow's computer. With practiced ease, he entered the password and accessed the resource database, which was also the entire Lu Corporation's database. Chapter 11. After some searching, Makoto successfully accessed a project named Paradise Resort. The file not only included the project's phased planning, but also detailed the manpower, resources, and finances required for each stage, everything one could need. Makoto rested his chin on his hand, reading carefully, looking for an opportunity for himself. Paradise Resort was the largest resort project in all of South City, and many big shots had been keeping it on their radar day and night. But in the end, this project landed in Lu Corporation's hands. If he played his cards right, Makoto knew he could make a fortune from it. But just as he was getting excited, Willow's voice suddenly came from behind him. What are you doing? The sudden sound made Makoto jump, almost causing him to collapse to the floor. He wanted to quickly exit the system and close the page. But Willow was standing right behind him, leaving him no time to act. Before he could think of a way to cover up, she had already walked right up to him. How did you know my computer password? Makoto awkwardly cleared his throat. Well, I was looking at your phone the other day and happened to see the password in your notes. I just glanced at it, but I have a good memory, so I remembered it. Willow asked again. Remembering it means you have to log in, and you did it while I was asleep. What were you trying to see? A few piercing questions almost made Makoto want to die right then and there. His brain was racing, and he finally came up with a response. He said, Sigh, Willow, to be honest, I just wanted to see if there was anything I could help with. Take this Paradise Resort project. For example, I really want to help you. But I don't even know your exact plans. I can't assist you without that. Willow furrowed her brows slightly. Then why didn't you just tell me? Makoto sighed heavily. I know you're quite independent, so if I had asked directly, you wouldn't have told me the truth. That's why I had to resort to this. I'm doing this for your own good, so please don't be mad at me. Willow's suspicion relaxed just a bit. All right then, what did you find? One simple sentence made Makoto freeze. He had only looked at the files for a few minutes. What could he have found? Moreover, these were things he was supposed to send to professionals. Even if he stared at them for hours, it would be useless. But with Willow's sharp gaze, he had to make something up. He said, I found something. Funding is the biggest issue. Willow looked a bit exasperated and replied, Is that so surprising? We've already invested 50 million in this resort, but it's still far from completion. We don't even know how much more will be needed. I've already decided, 2 days from now, I'll attend the Orange Hotel Investment Conference and see if I can find a suitable investor. Makoto's eyes lit up, and he quickly straightened his posture. This is a small matter. Leave it to me. I'll go. You'll go. Yes, I'm an investment professional. You can leave it all to me. Besides, I've been in touch with a lot of investors recently, and this is a good opportunity to talk to them in detail. Willow thought for a moment and said, All right, I'll have Manager Law accompany you. Manager Law was not only the manager at Lu Corporation but also one of the veterans of the company. Having worked there for decades with a strong influence, Makoto wanted to refuse, but Willow had already made up her mind. She said, It's settled then. You'll go together in 2 days. Discuss everything with him. All right. The next day, Makoto went to meet the so-called investors. Though they were called investors, in reality, He was meeting with one of his former lackeys who had been unproductive. Makoto said, "Randy, did you remember everything I told you?" Randy scratched his head, a troubled look on his face, and said, "Boss, this might not work. You know my abilities. I don't understand investments. Besides, investments usually involve hundreds of millions, and I can barely scrape enough for lunch today." "You don't." Before he could finish, Makoto suddenly pulled out a stack of cash and handed it to him. Seeing the pile of red bills, Randy immediately shut his mouth. Makoto followed up. "You just need to do what I tell you. Don't worry about anything else. I've already spoken with the finance director over there. Lu Corporation's money will be in your hands." That's right, he planned to use Lu Corporation's own money to invest in Lu Corporation, making a quick profit. Randy quickly nodded. All right, I'll do exactly what the boss says. Chapter 12. 2 days later, the investment conference was held as scheduled. The first-floor hall of the Orange Hotel was booked exclusively for the event, with numerous business tycoons in attendance. Orson and Makoto, of course, were among them. Orson said, "President Ito, where are the investors you mentioned?" Makoto smiled and replied, "Don't worry, old Wong, they'll be here soon." He leaned back on the sofa, feeling like everything was under his control. What he didn't know was that a pair of eyes had been watching him the entire time. At this moment, I was dressed in a custom-made suit, and my short hair made me look even more sharp and capable. My chiseled face seemed as if it had been carved from stone, deeply defined. The finishing touch was the scar on my face, which made it seem as though I had endured the test of time and hardships. I turned to my assistant and said, "Go ahead, connect with Lu Corporation first." The assistant looked puzzled. "Connect with Lu Corporation? Wait, aren't we here to meet with Dragon Ball Group?" Dragon Ball Group was the rival of Lu Corporation, and was also one of the most powerful giants in South City's business world. The assistant continued, "Besides, with Makoto here, even if I go over, he won't give me the time of day." Clearly, the assistant had already figured out what kind of person Makoto was, but what he didn't know was that this was exactly the kind of reaction I wanted. I said, "Go on. If they don't push you away, we won't be able to continue with the next part of the plan." The assistant didn't fully understand but still followed my instructions. Soon, the assistant approached Orson. "Hello, are you Manager Law? My employer would like to discuss investment matters with you." Orson asked. "May I ask who your employer is?" The assistant turned and pointed to me. At that moment, all Orson could see was my back, and he couldn't make out my face. Orson asked, "Is your employer an investor from South City, or from East Market?" The assistant slowly shook his head and replied, "Neither. My employer just returned from overseas and is looking to expand his business in South City. I'm not sure if he'd be interested in discussing it." Orson naturally nodded and said, "Of course, I'd be interested. The investment conference is precisely for discussions like this." He was about to move forward when Makoto suddenly grabbed his arm. "Manager Law, weren't we supposed to meet with my investors?" Orson responded honestly. "President Ito, even normal people compare products before making a purchase, let alone investments. Besides, your investors haven't arrived yet, so meeting with someone else doesn't seem unreasonable, right?" Chapter 13. Makoto's expression turned cold, but due to the other party's status, he didn't dare to act too harshly, so he redirected his frustration towards the assistant. He said, "What kind of person is your employer? Doesn't he know how to come here himself? What's he doing, putting on a show in front of me? How much money does he even have? 1 million? 2 million? Does he really think anyone can just collaborate with us? You've got 2 choices, either have him come here himself, or just go about your business." The assistant's temper flared, and he turned to leave. After all, I had instructed him that if Makoto was being difficult, there was no need to waste time arguing with him. Orson's expression showed his disbelief. "Ito, this really isn't right. You're making an enemy of Lu Corporation. Besides, if he's really a big investor, we might be missing out on an opportunity." Makoto sneered, completely unconcerned. "What big investor? Just look at him. Does he have the air of a big investor? Besides, I've already gone through the list, and the only real big investor here is the one I brought. And look, here he comes." Orson turned to see a man in a suit walking over. It was Randy, although he walked a bit awkwardly and his greasy hair didn't give off the impression of someone important. Makoto trusted him, so he had no choice but to go over and have a chat. Meanwhile, the assistant returned looking frustrated. He said, "Big brother, I told you there was no need to go. Not only did I get no results, but I also had to endure that guy's disgusting attitude." I smiled and patted the assistant on the shoulder. I know. Thanks for your hard work. Let's focus on the real business now." I stood up and walked toward the general manager of Dragon Ball Group. I said, "Hello, I'm David Chan, and I'd like to discuss an investment partnership with Dragon Ball Group." The general manager looked up at me, then stood up politely and shook my hand. He said, Mr. Chan, I'm curious, what are your plans for this investment? I cleared my throat and deliberately raised my voice. It's simple, I plan to invest 100 million. For the first round, I can invest 30 million. The moment those words were spoken, the general manager was stunned. Not just him, but everyone else in the room turned their attention to me. In South City's investment scene, no one had ever invested such a huge amount of money. After all, 100 million in cash flow was no small amount, and even top-tier companies might not have that kind of liquidity available at once. People started whispering. Who is this guy? He looks young. How dare he make such bold claims? I've never heard of anyone investing 100 million. Forget the 100 million, just the 30 million for the first round. That's something we've never seen before. Makoto and Orson, of course, also looked over, their eyes filled with confusion. The general manager frowned and said, Mr. Chan, what did you say just now? I didn't quite catch that. Could you say it again? I smiled faintly and repeated. I want to invest 100 million, with 30 million for the first round. I'm wondering if you'd be interested. If not, we can skip it, and I'll just go look for other companies. At these words, the other business tycoons immediately couldn't sit still and started approaching. We at Desheng Group are interested. Let's talk. We're also interested and will offer you absolute sincerity. Mr. Chan, right, please. Let's talk privately. Chapter 14. Seeing this, Orson no longer had any intention of continuing his conversation with Randy, and turned to walk toward me. Makoto quickly reached out to stop him. Manager Law, what are you doing? We haven't finished talking yet. Orson slowly spoke. I don't think it's necessary to continue. Let's take a look at what's going on over there first. If the investment is really as high as 100 million, I don't think I need to say much about how to choose. Makoto was instantly shut down. After all, the investment Randy was discussing was only 8 million. Which was like comparing the sky to the earth next to my offer. As the group of tycoons approached, the general manager of Dragon Ball Group instantly became furious. He waved his hand. Go, go, go. Stay over there. Mr. Chan was the first to talk to us. What's your business here? Mr. Chan, I'd be happy to discuss things with you. The contract will be ready right away. But before he could finish, a cold snort sounded. Heh, a grown man. And you can't even see through such a small trick. And you call yourself a general manager. The general manager turned around in displeasure. Just in time to meet Makoto's gaze. What did you say? Say it again. Makoto shrugged. Did I say something wrong? He's talking about 100 million. So I'll talk about 10 billion. After all these years, have you ever heard of anyone being able to offer 100 million in cash for an investment? Think for a second. Don't let yourself be fooled, only to end up counting other people's money. The general manager's face showed signs of hesitation. Before he could speak, Makoto had already walked up to me and said, Do you really have 100 million to invest? Do you have any proof? Forget the 100 million. Show me the 30 million first. If you can't bring it, then get lost and stop causing trouble. He was pressuring me hard, hoping to expose my bluff as soon as possible. Of course, this was also to prove that his earlier actions were justified. I smiled faintly and said, It seems like you don't really trust me. Makoto retorted, Of course not. Why should I trust you? Who do you think you are? Okay, since that's the case, let me show you whether I have the strength. I waved at the assistant. Get the money delivered. Just send over 30 million. Yes, the assistant quickly made the call. And Makoto burst into even louder laughter. Ha ha ha. Really good at pretending. Aren't you afraid of pretending too much? Do you even know what 30 million in cash means? You probably haven't even seen that much in your life. If you manage to get the money here today, I'll kneel and give you 3 kowtows. I couldn't help but smile to myself. This is too easy. I said, All right, you said it. Let's wait and see. Time passed, and not even a trace of the 30 million was in sight. Makoto's smile became even wider. Ha ha ha. Where's the 30 million? Do you even have 3,000 on you? I'm really impressed. Who's in charge of the vetting process? How can any Tom, Dick, or Harry just show up at this event? This is total chaos. Someone, get this guy out of here. Not only Makoto, but other big shots also began to question my identity. He can't really be a fraud, can he? I think it's very likely. Who can come up with that much cash? It's impossible. Exactly. And he's so young. How could he have that kind of strength? He's probably here to eat and drink for free. The general manager, too, had had enough. He raised his hand, pointing at me. Chapter 15. He said, You'd better give me a reasonable explanation today, or we're not done. Makoto burst into laughter. Ha ha. What explanation could he possibly give you? It's just that there are issues with the funds. Or maybe the money is in an overseas account and can't be transferred right now. The general manager slowly clenched his fists, his cold gaze fixed on me. To say he was on the verge of taking action would not be an exaggeration. He asked, Is that true? I smiled again. No, of course not. Just give me 5 more minutes. The money will definitely be here. Makoto couldn't hold back anymore. Haha. 5 more minutes. Even if you had 5 days or 5 years, do you think you can get the money? Hurry up and kneel and apologize. Then get out of here. This is no place for you. Other tycoons also started to speak up, criticizing me. This is too much. I got excited for nothing. Sigh. I shouldn't have trusted him. He's too young. How could he be a big investor? Damn. How did such a disgusting person even get in here? Facing their criticisms, I remained silent, with only a faint smile on my lips, but the assistant couldn't take it anymore, and was about to step forward to argue. But I grabbed him and stopped him. He said, "Big brother, these guys are too much. Are you really just going to tolerate this?" I softly replied, "What's the rush? When the truth is revealed, we'll clear our name." That was the truth, without the facts. Their explanations would only appear weak and hollow. 5 minutes passed quickly, and soon, the two of us became the targets of everyone. Someone, get these two out of here. Where are the security guards? Hurry up and act. Don't let these two disturb our conference. Get them out. The crowd shouted, as if even one more second of me being there was an insult to them. A group of security guards quickly surrounded us. Just as they were about to make their move, a sudden sound of hurried footsteps came from outside. Turning around, a group of bank staff dressed in uniforms walked in, carrying a secure briefcase. When the group of workers entered the venue, the briefcase was placed on the ground. The leader of the group was none other than Luis, the vice president of Huiguang Bank. "Mr. Chan, here's the money you requested. We withdrew it overnight. Since we had to involve several branches, it took a little longer. Please forgive the delay." I smiled and waved my hand. "It's fine. It's fine. I'm just glad it's here. Let's open the case." As the case was opened, stacks of red bills of RMB gleamed, nearly blinding the onlookers. Some of the tycoons even slapped themselves in disbelief. People started whispering, "Am I seeing this right? Is this really 30 million in cash? Wow. I've never seen this much cash before. Yeah. Looks like he wasn't lying. He really has the strength to back it up." Everything unfolded just as I expected. The doubts and mockery disappeared in an instant, replaced by astonished gasps. Makoto shook his head in disbelief. This can't be real. Where did this guy get so much money?" He urgently turned to Luis. "Vice President Luis, are you sure this is his money?" Luis casually replied. "Why, is it not? Unless it's yours." But Makoto was silenced once again. What he didn't know was that, over the years, in addition to receiving numerous research grants, I had made several successful investments both domestically and internationally, each one more profitable than the last. Forget 100 million. I could easily double that amount if needed. Chapter 16. I smiled at Makoto across from me. I said, "I remember we made a bet earlier. If I could bring the money, you'd kneel and kowtow 3 times. Well, the money is here now, so you can start." Makoto gritted his teeth, pointing at me and saying, "Don't push it too far." I shrugged and replied, "Am I pushing it too far? The deal was made between us in advance. You can't just go back on your word, can you? Or are you one of those men who speak nonsense?" Makoto's teeth were nearly grinding to dust, and all the pressure was now on him. But kneeling was impossible. He could only turn and walk away quickly. Meanwhile, the general manager extended his hand with a smile. "Mr. Chan, the earlier incident was just a misunderstanding. Now we can talk about cooperation." The other tycoons were not far behind, eagerly pushing their companies for the deal. "Mr. Chan, cooperate with us. Our sincerity far exceeds the others. Stay out of it. What makes you think your sincerity is greater than ours? Enough of the arguing. I'm taking Mr. Chan as my investor." The tycoons bickered, as if they were about to start a fight at any moment. Among them, the one most likely to secure the deal was, of course, the Dragon Ball Group. But my next words made the general manager want to curl up and disappear. I said, "But I no longer want to cooperate with Dragon Ball Group. I'd like to wait and see." The general manager froze. Why? Didn't we agree on this?" I raised an eyebrow and said, "Who told you we agreed? I only showed interest in cooperating. And besides, you don't even trust me, so I think it's better we don't cooperate." With that, I turned and walked away, leaving the general manager standing there, completely flustered. I'm not sure how much time passed, but eventually, the general manager slapped himself in the face. Damn, that idiot Makoto just ruined everything for me. He was so frustrated with himself, but there's no such thing as a pill for regret. After leaving the venue, the assistant spoke up. "Big brother, what should we do next? Should we go directly to Lu Corporation?" I shook my head and said, "Not yet. Our reputation is already out there. Now we just need to wait for the right price. Don't worry, Lu Corporation will come to us." I was right. The events at the conference quickly spread like wildfire, and Willow immediately summoned Orson to her office. She scolded him. "Manager Law, I trusted you by having you represent me at the conference. And this is how you repay me. Why didn't you secure that deal? What the hell were you doing? She was seething, her chest rising and falling with anger, as if she were about to explode. Orson slowly lowered his head and said, CEO Liu, you can't blame me entirely. I wanted to talk with him, but President Ito didn't give me the chance. Plus, you asked me to cooperate with him. So, though his words were unfinished, the meaning was clear. In the end, it was Willow's own fault, and she had no one else to blame. Just then, Makoto pushed the door open and walked in. Willow naturally had no good attitude toward him. She bit her lip and said, "Why are you here? Look at what you've done. We lost that investor. What will we do with our upcoming projects?" Chapter 17. Makoto gently pressed his hand down and said, "Don't rush. Don't rush. Everything is under my control. I think this David is a bit strange. If his capabilities are really that strong, why didn't we notice it earlier? I suggest we investigate his background thoroughly before taking any further steps. Also," he hesitated. Willow asked. "Also what?" he said. "I keep feeling like I've seen him somewhere before, but I just can't remember where." Willow waved her hand dismissively. "That's not important. Hurry up and investigate. Speed is key. The faster we act, the more we can take the initiative." Understood. Makoto's speed was indeed fast. Within 2 days, he had dug up every detail about my identity, but it was all for nothing, because I had already anticipated this. My background was completely clean, and there was nothing to find. After learning the situation, Willow immediately gave her orders. "We must extend an olive branch to him immediately. This investor must be secured." Makoto waved his hand. "Don't rush. If we don't act, no other company will either. Besides, that guy is arrogant and dismissive of everyone. He won't be interested in anyone else other than us." As soon as he finished speaking, Manager Law brought the bad news. CEO Liu. According to the latest reports, many executives from other companies have already approached David, including some major players. Not only that, it seems David is also open to discussing cooperation. Willow slammed her hand on the table, immediately getting anxious. "This is bad. Get the car ready. We need to go find him now." Makoto tried to speak more, but Willow didn't give him the chance and turned to walk away. Helpless, he could only follow behind. In the car, Makoto kept talking. "There's no need to rush. I don't believe that so many companies are actually chasing him. Slow down. We still have time." But as soon as they arrived at the hotel lobby where George was staying, Makoto instantly fell silent. The hotel lobby was already packed with business tycoons. Top groups like Dashing Group and Huasher Group were all present. Thinking about Makoto's earlier words, he now felt like a clown. After some investigation, it was learned that George was currently in his room discussing matters with Dragon Ball Group, while the others had to wait in the lobby. Willow silently cursed under her breath. Manager Law said in a heavy tone, "This is bad. Dragon Ball Group beat us to it. The stakes they've put forward are definitely not low. We're bound to fall into a passive position." Makoto tried to speak up, but he realized it seemed there was no place for him to do so. At that moment, I exited the elevator and walked straight toward the entrance. A group of business tycoons immediately gathered around and asked, "How did it go? Didn't negotiate successfully? If not, why don't you talk to us and me? I'll offer more sincerity than Dragon Ball Group." Facing these questions, I was indifferent, but my peripheral vision caught Willow in the distance. Seeing that familiar face, countless memories surged to the forefront of my mind. Although she had betrayed me, and I had returned for revenge, seeing her again still stirred something within me. But not long after, that feeling was shattered by Makoto. That guy only made me feel disgusted. Arriving at the hotel entrance, I got into the car. I said, "Everyone, for now, I just want some peace and quiet. We can talk about the investment later." I signaled to the assistant to start the car, and with a rev of the engine, we drove away. Willow had originally wanted to express her sincerity, but there were too many people, and she couldn't get to the front. She said, "Manager Law, I have a task for you. Find out where he's staying as quickly as possible. We can't let anyone else get there first." "Yes." Makoto, standing beside them, was still unable to get a word in. Chapter 18. The next day, Manager Law actually found out where I was staying, but what he didn't know was that all of this was intentional. I had deliberately leaked the information to him. Willow rushed over without delay, with Makoto and Manager Law right behind her. As soon as the door opened, and the familiar face came into view, my mind went blank. Although I had prepared for this, my heart couldn't help but flutter at the sight. It wasn't just me. Willow was also caught in a moment of daze. Although my style and appearance had changed, my eyes and the sharp angles on my face were the same. If the law enforcement hadn't declared my death, she would truly have believed that the person standing before her was me. I quickly snapped out of it, raised an eyebrow, and asked, "What's the matter?" Willow quickly regained her composure. she said. Mr. Chan, I'm Willow Liu from Liu Corporation. I'd like to discuss a potential partnership with you. Without thinking, I directly refused. I've made myself clear. I'm not interested in cooperating at the moment. Please leave. Willow shook her head repeatedly. No, please. I think we need to talk. The terms I'm offering will definitely make Mr. Chan interested. Please, Mr. Chan, just give me a bit of time. If it really doesn't work, I won't bother you any further. Naturally, I played along. Once we entered the room, Willow handed over her proposed terms. I must admit, she was serious about this. She had raised the profit share for the resort project to 35%. Normally, the share would be around 20%. She asked, Mr. Chan, what do you think? I casually tossed the document aside. I said, I don't think much of it. Willow frowned slightly and asked, then what are your demands? I said, it's simple. I want full control over this project. You can arrange a position for me, like deputy manager or something. I paused for a moment and continued. Also, this gentleman must fulfill the bet we made that day. I pointed at Makoto. Makoto was instantly furious. He shouted, you're crossing the line. Willow furrowed her brows again. She asked, fulfill the bet? What do you mean? Manager Law spoke up to clarify. When he learned that I wanted Makoto to kneel and kowtow 3 times, Willow was clearly conflicted. She said, Mr. Chan, I can let you take control of this project, but as for the bet, let's forget about that. After all, it was just a joke. There's no need. Before she could finish, I raised my hand and interrupted. I don't think it was a joke. A bet is a bet. If you can't lose, why make the bet in the first place? If this gentleman is really unwilling, then forget it. I'm not someone who forces others. I waved my hand, signaling for the assistant to come over. I said, contact Dragon Ball Group and tell them I agree with their terms. Have them bring the contract over. Yes. Just as the deal was almost in my hands, Willow immediately panicked. She said, wait, let's talk this through. I lazily crossed my legs. I said, it's time to start. Makoto clenched his teeth, feeling as if his face was being dragged across the ground in humiliation. Chapter 19. In the end, Makoto still bent his knee. There was no choice. For the sake of his ultimate plan, he couldn't afford to fall out with Willow just yet. I laughed loudly. Ha. Then it settled. In a few days, I'll join Liu Corporation. Back in the room, Makoto was furious, smashing and throwing things as the anger inside him wouldn't subside. Willow sighed helplessly. Sigh. This was the only way. I hope you can understand. Makoto spat on the floor. Ugh. I can't understand it. I've never kneeled to anyone in my life. Besides, why does this project have to be handed to him? Who does he think he is? All he has to do is send the money. Why is he interfering with everything? Willow let out a long breath. She said, I know you've been wronged. Here's what I'll do. The company is short of an executive vice president. If you don't mind, I'll announce your appointment tomorrow. Hearing the words, executive vice president, Makoto's eyes instantly lit up. He had been eyeing this position for a long time, but had never found the right opportunity to bring it up. Now, it was being offered to him on a silver platter. Once he became the executive vice president, he would have authority over all the department managers and directors. That would bring his grand plan even closer to realization. Makoto said, all right, since you trust me so much, I won't decline. But, aside from him handling the project, I'd also like to supervise it from the side, just to be safe. What do you think? Willow nodded and said, sure, it's all up to you. As soon as she finished speaking, Makoto suddenly moved forward and ripped Willow's clothes off, saying, my anger's a bit much right now. You need to help me cool off. A hint of shyness flashed across Willow's face, and soon, the two of them were caught up in a frenzy once again. Not long after, Makoto walked out of the room shirtless. He went to the balcony, smoking a cigarette as he made a phone call. He said, go teach the kid a lesson, but remember to disguise yourselves well. Don't let him figure it out. Also, don't kill him. Just break his legs for me. Yes. After hanging up, a ruthless glint flashed in Makoto's eyes. He ground his teeth and muttered, you like making me kneel? Huh? Well, I'll make sure you never stand again in your life. At that moment, I was sitting in the car, thinking about my next move. Suddenly, the assistant slammed on the brakes, and the tires screeched loudly against the pavement. Luckily, we had our seatbelts on, or we would have both been thrown out of the car. The assistant cursed. Does this guy even know how to drive? Just as the assistant was about to get out, I stopped him. The situation's off. Get moving. Before the assistant could react, several men in black suits got out of the car ahead of us. Fortunately, the assistant was skilled at driving. He quickly turned the steering wheel, revved the engine, and executed a perfect drift, but the car behind us wasn't letting up. The two cars engaged in an extreme high-speed chase on the road. Big brother, who are these guys? Why are they suddenly causing trouble for us? I smiled faintly and said, I think I know who they are. Follow my lead and drive to the old district. The assistant hesitated for a moment. He said, The old district? That's not a good idea. It's all narrow alleys there. We'll get blocked in for sure. I smiled slightly and said, That's exactly what I want. Ah. The assistant was completely confused, having no idea what I was planning. I said, Drive to the old district. If anything happens, I'll take responsibility. Chapter 20. Before long, the car drove into the old district. Just as the assistant had said, the area was still undeveloped, with many buildings dating back decades. This resulted in winding alleys where it was difficult to even turn the car around. And in places like this, the result was inevitable. We were soon caught up. The assistant quickly turned the steering wheel, but in the end, the car got stuck in the alley. As several men in black suits charged at us, weapons in hand, the assistant's heart raced. He said, Big brother, you need to run. I'll hold them off. Just as he was about to get out, I stopped him. I smiled and said, No need. Leave these guys to me. I've been wanting to test my skills on a few people. You stay in the car, no matter what happens. Don't get out. With that, I opened the car door and stepped out. The group of black-clad men glared at me fiercely, their eyes filled with provocation. The leader said, Kid, you must be out of your mind. Driving into a place like this. Another underling chimed in. Yeah, if this were on the open road, I wouldn't be sure I could handle you. But now, you've come right to us. Kid, make it easy on yourself and break your own legs. We'll spare you the trouble. I waved my hand dismissively. Just do it already. Stop talking. As they were about to move in, the assistant suddenly blocked me. Take it out on me. Don't touch my big brother. I felt a mix of appreciation and helplessness. I gently pushed the assistant aside. I said, I told you it's not your problem. Go sit in the car and rest. I'll take care of them. But, no buts. Watch me. With that, I rushed forward, my speed like lightning. Before the men could react, I had already reached them. Then came an overwhelming one-sided slaughter. These so-called tough guys were like chicks in front of me, completely unable to fight back. To put it bluntly, this was a perfect case of dimensionality reduction. The scene quickly filled with cries of pain. Ah, it hurts. My leg. Please stop. We can talk. Before long, all of their legs were broken, and one by one, they knelt on the ground, no longer showing any of their previous arrogance. I smiled and asked, Weren't you guys going to break my legs? Why are you already out of breath? You have this little bit of strength and still want to cause trouble. You must be tired of living. The men begged for mercy. Big brother, please spare us. It's all our fault. We won't dare do it again. Please, big brother, spare us just this once. I looked over at the assistant. I said, Call the law enforcement. Ah. Okay. The assistant, finally realizing what I meant, dialed the law enforcement number. After handling the situation, we got back in the car. The assistant couldn't stop talking. Big brother, when did you become so strong? You're like the demon king descended from the heavens, truly a god among men. Is this the result of your devil training from last time? You're so cool. How did you train? Can you teach me some moves? I smiled mysteriously and said, Just drive. If necessary, I can teach you a few tricks. Okay. Upon learning the news, Makoto was alarmed and quickly ordered that all ties between him and his underlings be severed, including their accounts. He instructed, Go visit them at the law enforcement. Keep an eye on them. If they dare say anything more, they can start preparing to collect their parents' bodies. Chapter 21. After hanging up the phone, Makoto was so angry that he almost smashed everything in his room. But since Willow was still resting and he couldn't disturb her, he had to go to the garden to vent his frustrations alone. Damn it, where did this guy come from? Always getting in my way. Just wait and see. I want to see who will be laughing in the end. 2 days later, Makoto woke up early and went to Lu Corporation. This was the first time he came to the company since becoming the executive vice president. His goal was clear. He went straight to the security team. The team leader was a bald man, with a shiny head, and was nicknamed Big Bald Egg. When the team leader saw Makoto Ito, he greeted him with a smile. Isn't this Vice President Ito? What brings you, the big boss, to my little temple? Are you not welcoming me? No. How could I dare? But next time, you should let me know when you're coming, so I can personally welcome you. Makoto waved his hand. No need. I'm here for business. I've noticed that our company's security isn't great. It feels like anyone can just walk in. The team leader froze for a moment, thinking, Uh-oh, this is trouble. He asked, Vice President Ito, who told you that? That can't be right. What do you mean, can't be right? I've already looked into it. Don't act like you don't know. From now on, pay more attention and don't let anyone random come in. This is an insult to the company. The team leader nodded repeatedly. Okay, I'll make sure to improve the security. Makoto asked, By the way, what's the main task today? The team leader answered honestly. He said, CEO Lu asked me to take good care of the new deputy manager of the project department today. This was exactly what Makoto had been waiting to hear. He said, "No need to entertain him. He won't be coming today. If he's not coming, that doesn't mean someone else won't come pretending to be him. I've received word that someone will try to impersonate him to get free food and drink. You know what to do, right?" The team leader immediately straightened his back. "Got it. Leave it to me. I'll make sure that guy doesn't get in." "Good. I'll be watching your performance." At this moment, I had no idea what trouble Makoto was stirring up again. Half an hour later, the assistant and I arrived at the gates of Lu Corporation. Looking at the Lu Corporation building, I felt no sense of familiarity or warmth. Instead, all I felt was alienation and distance. Although I had been with Willow for 10 years, I had never interfered with the company's affairs, always keeping my boundaries. But now, it seemed that this sense of boundary wasn't such a good thing. If I had paid more attention, I might have discovered Makoto sooner. I exhaled a heavy sigh and slowly walked inside. But as soon as I stepped into the building, the security guard at the door blocked my way. "Stop. What are you here for?" the assistant responded. "This is the new deputy manager of the project department. Let us through." The guard was stunned for a moment, then immediately smiled. "The deputy manager of the project department, is that David?" The assistant furrowed his brows and said, "You're calling him David? Get out of the way." The guard sneered. "What if I called him that? What are you going to do about it?" The assistant's face instantly turned cold. He said, "I suggest you don't make trouble. Move aside now." Or, before he could finish, a cold snort interrupted. "Or what?" Turning around, a man with a shiny bald head walked over. He didn't address us, but instead looked at the security guard. "Idiot. I've told you 1,000 times. Just throw guys like this out. What's the point of talking to them?" The assistant looked puzzled and said, "Are you crazy?" The team leader grinned and said, "Hey, I think you're the crazy one. Who dares to impersonate someone else? You're asking for trouble." I spoke up at the right moment. "Are you saying I'm impersonating someone?" The team leader nodded and said, "Yeah, isn't that obvious? We've already seen through your little tricks. Why don't you show your true self now? Look at you, all dressed up. Where did you get that knockoff? Introduce me to your source. I'd like to buy a couple of suits myself." The assistant clenched his fists. "I'll say this one last time, move aside." The team leader puffed out his chest. "Ha, you want to get tough with me? Let's see if you can handle it. I'll make sure you don't even recognize your own mother today." As soon as he finished speaking, a slap landed on his face. The force of the slap was enough to knock him to the ground. I shook my hand with disdain and said, "Seems like the security standards here are too low. Anyone can get in." The team leader immediately rolled up his sleeves. "Son of a, how dare you hit me? I'm going to fight you. Why are you all standing there? Hurry up and do something." The surrounding security guards quickly approached. I stretched my muscles, ready for action. At the critical moment, a roar echoed. "Everyone stop." Manager Law quickly walked over, coldly questioning, "What are you doing? Who told you to be disrespectful to Deputy Manager Chan?" The team leader froze for a moment, then quickly waved his hand. "No, Manager Law, you misunderstand. This guy isn't Deputy Manager Chan. He's just an imposter." Slap. Another loud slap rang out. Manager Law had a violent temper and didn't tolerate him at all. Manager Law angrily said, "Shut your filthy mouth." He then walked in front of me and gave a slight bow. "Deputy Manager Chan, it's our mistake, and we've frightened you." I replied, "It's fine. I didn't lose anything." Now the team leader was getting anxious. He said, "No, this can't be right. It's impossible for him to be the real one. I just received news this morning that Deputy Manager Chan isn't coming, and it's an imposter here." Manager Law gave him a displeased look. "Whose news are you talking about?" The team leader began to say, "It's from Mako." Before he could finish, a figure dashed over. It was Makoto. As expected, the team leader was slapped twice again, then kicked to the ground. Makoto angrily shouted, "What the hell is wrong with you? Are you blind? You can't even recognize Deputy Manager Chan. You should donate those eyes." The team leader covered his face, looking aggrieved. He said, "Vice President Ito, it's not my fault. It's you." Before he could finish, Makoto slapped him again. He cursed, "Did I not teach you properly? Such small matters, and you make me explain them to you. What the hell are you even doing?" The team leader had now suffered his fair share of punishment. Being beaten by 3 people in turn, he'd probably never forget this for the rest of his life. I quietly watched this spectacle, already knowing who was behind it all. Seeing that the team leader was nearly beaten to death, I raised my hand and said, "All right, Vice President Ito, I'm fine. Let's call it quits." After speaking, I turned and walked away, not wanting to stay any longer. Once I left, the anger in Makoto's eyes intensified. Arriving at the project department, I was momentarily stunned by the scene before me. Well, is this the project department? If I didn't know better, I'd think I had walked into a wonderland. Chapter 22. Looking around. The project department was filled with smoke, and I even began to wonder if these employees could even see their computer screens. No, wait, they weren't even looking at the screens. That's right. One by one, they were sitting at their desks, either playing on their phones, watching videos, or sleeping with their heads on the desk. Not a single person was working properly. I looked at Manager Law in disbelief and asked, Manager Law, you're not joking, right? This is really the project department. Manager Law nodded. Yes, this is the project department. I frowned and said, what kind of joke is this? Which project manager would allow this? This place is worse than a talent market. Manager Law sighed helplessly. You don't know, but these people are distant relatives of Willow. Young CEO Lou specifically ordered that they be well taken care of. Plus, the department head is Willow's uncle. So, he trailed off, but I already understood. In the past, I never paid attention to the affairs of Lou Corporation, so I didn't know about these parasites. I took a deep breath, bracing myself, and walked into the project department. The assistant shouted loudly, "This is the newly appointed deputy manager of the project department. Everyone, please pause your work or your games." As expected, no one paid him any attention. Everyone continued as they pleased, doing whatever they were doing. The assistant wanted to say more, but was suddenly choked by a cloud of smoke, quickly running out of the department. I wasn't any better off, and within 2 minutes, I had to retreat as well. I said, "What kind of place is this? How am I supposed to work here? Is there not a single normal person in the whole department?" Manager Law responded honestly. "There are 3 team leaders who are the backbone of the department. They handle the regular projects." "Where are they?" Manager Law pointed to a nearby storage room. "They're working in there." I was speechless and had no choice but to get up and head over. But just as I opened the door, a chair flew straight at me. "Watch out." The assistant tried to push me out of the way, but it was too late. Luckily, I wasn't the same as before. I swiftly knocked the chair away. Inside the storage room, there were 2 men and 1 woman, sitting with computers and thick files in front of them. Because the space was so small, the 3 of them had to sit on small stools, with no decent desks in sight. Now I understood why the chair had flown, honestly. Even a knife coming at me would be understandable in this cramped space. Manager Law's expression changed, and he was about to scold them, but I waved him off. "Manager Law, go do your work. I'll handle this." "Can you handle it?" "Of course, go ahead." I smiled at the 3 of them. "Hello, let me introduce myself. I'm David, the new." "No need to say more. You're just that new idiot investor, right?" Hearing this, I was momentarily stunned. "I'm the idiot investor." A large, burly man stood up. He said, "Yeah. Who else would be dumb enough to throw millions into a project department like this and then take a deputy manager role? If you're not an idiot, then who is?" This man was Pat, known for being blunt and not holding back. The other 2 were Daniel and Santiago, the 3 team leaders of the department. I awkwardly cleared my throat and said, How are you guys working here? Why are only the 3 of you here? Where are the other employees?" "Heh, the employees are obviously slacking off over there. Why else would they be with us?" "Yeah, where else would we be working? At your house." "Doesn't matter. We've already decided. We're quitting after today. Who wants to stay in this shitty place?" I could tell that the 3 were already fed up, so I immediately assured them, "Don't worry. I'm here to help you out. I'll make sure you get what you deserve." The 3 of them froze, then laughed lightly. "Heh, you really know how to talk big. You don't even believe the words coming out of your own mouth. You're going to help us? Who do you think you are? Yeah, are you on some kind of drugs? If you're feeling off, you should go puke it out, or you'll regret it." I smiled confidently and said, "Sorry, I'm a man of my word. If you don't believe me, let's make a bet. If I win, you'll work for me from now on. If I lose, you can do whatever you want with me." The 3 of them exchanged glances, clearly shocked, but with the pressure mounting, none of them would back down. "Let's do it. Who's afraid of who? Let's go." Meanwhile, Makoto approached the project department's head. "Diego, Minister Lou, looks like life's treating you well lately. I see you've put on a bit of weight." Diego took a deep drag from his cigarette, instinctively resting his feet on Makoto's desk. "Things are fine. If you've got something to say, just say it. If I can help, I will." A surge of anger rose in Makoto's chest, but, since Diego was still useful to him, he gritted his teeth and held back. Makoto said, "I heard the project department's got a new deputy manager. You've met him, right?" Diego replied, "No, there's been a deputy manager every few years. They never last more than 2 days. They always end up leaving. What's the big deal?" Makoto slowly shook his head. "No, this time it's different. This guy might be a problem. He's probably going to try and straighten out the project department." Diego burst into laughter. "Straighten out the project department? With him? You're killing me. Does he even have the right?" "I'll make it clear, if he really manages to straighten out the project department, I'll take his last name. Makoto was about to say more, but Diego cut him off. Is there anything else? If not, I'm out. My game's not finished yet. I can't leave my teammates hanging. Makoto was speechless. He said, don't underestimate him. If he really cleans up the department, you won't even know where to cry. Listen to me. You'd better figure out something quickly, or you'll just be dragged along. Diego chuckled. Heh, I've never been one to be dragged around. All right, I'm done here. I'm leaving. He was about to walk out when a project department employee rushed in. Minister, there's a big problem. The scene rewinds 5 minutes earlier. I had arrived at the project department with the 3 team leaders. As soon as I was about to enter, Daniel instinctively blocked me. Maybe we should just forget it. Once you step in, there's no turning back. Santiago nodded slightly. Yeah, the project department's already beyond saving. No one can fix it. Not even you. You might as well quit while you're ahead. Pat, standing to the side, continued to stir the pot. Don't be like that. If he wants to go, let him. Otherwise, he'll just lose the bet. He just doesn't like losing. We can't take away his chance. I smiled calmly. That's right. I've come this far. Might as well give it a shot. With that, I pushed open the project department's door and, without hesitation, drew a steel rod from behind me. Chapter 23. A few minutes later, Diego rushed to the project department in a hurry. Along the way, he had already thought of everything. As long as that so-called minister dared to make a move, he promised to make him leave with his tail between his legs. All right, David. You dare to cause trouble in my project department. I think you're tired of living. He stopped mid-sentence because the scene before him was not what he had imagined. The staff of the project department were all working diligently, sitting in front of their computer desks, their fingers frantically tapping on the keyboards. Not only that, but the windows were open, and the previously smoky, mystical scene had completely disappeared. He instinctively glanced at the sign at the door and muttered to himself, "Is this really the project department?" Just then, a cheerful laugh came. Ha ha. Of course, it's the project department. It was me, followed by the 3 team leaders and assistants trailing behind me. Diego's face changed. He said, "Didn't you want to cause trouble here?" I shrugged and said, "Unjustly accused. I just got appointed today. How would I be foolish enough to cause trouble? Besides, look around. Everyone's working peacefully. Does this look like trouble?" Diego looked around, and indeed, there was no sign of any disturbance. He turned around and slapped his assistant across the face. "Tell me, what is this about?" The assistant, now completely confused, had no idea what was going on. He said, I don't know. I really saw him walk in with a stick earlier, and his posture clearly seemed like he was about to make a move. I rushed to inform you at that moment. I didn't know it would turn out like this." Diego couldn't be bothered with him and turned his gaze to the project department staff. "What are you all doing? Who told you to work? Did you all take the wrong medicine or something? Stop whatever you're doing and go back to your tasks. I'll only say this once." His words fell flat, like pebbles dropping into the ocean, not stirring even the slightest ripple. No one even glanced at him, continuing with their work as usual. Diego's face turned green with anger. He said, "All right, so you all want to revolt? Huh, believe it or not, all I need is to give a word, and I can have finance stop your salaries. Then you'll all be drinking Northwest winds." I walked up with a smile, pulling Diego aside. I said, all right, Minister Liu, calm down. Let's talk things through. I know you're feeling unbalanced right now, but you have to accept this fact. You've been completely sidelined." When Diego heard the words, completely sidelined, his body shook violently. Damn it, he just went out for tea, and when he came back, he'd been sidelined. What kind of nonsense was this? Before he could react, I continued. "I've personally paid these people 10 times their previous salary. Do you think you can still convince them? Of course, if you want 10 times the salary as well, I can give it to you right away. But on the condition that you stop causing trouble. Not only that, but you all have to listen to me. Do whatever I tell you to do, or you'll have to leave the project department." Diego froze for a moment before laughing out loud in anger. He said, "Hey, leave the project department? Do you think you're somebody? I've been here for so long, and no one has ever dared to say I should leave. Besides, do you know the relationship between me and President Liu? Believe me, with just one word, I can make you leave." The corners of my mouth curled into a slight smile. I said, "Of course. I don't believe you. I don't know what your relationship is, but I do know that Liu's group really needs my investment right now. As the largest investor in Liu's group, if I tell President Liu to make you leave, do you think she'll agree?" Diego's heart sank. He had nothing more to say. He and Willow Liu were just distant cousins. While I was the largest investor in Liu's group, everyone knew what choice would be made. I patted his shoulder and said, "All right, from now on, listen to me obediently, and I'll guarantee your livelihood. Otherwise, we'll be in a situation where it's either sink or swim. Though, based on my estimation, The fish will definitely die. Whether the net breaks or not, I'm not sure. After saying this, I swaggered away. In just a few minutes, I had completely taken control of the project department. Daniel couldn't help but remark, to take over the project department so quickly, if this had happened before, I'd never have dared to even think about it. Pat curled his lip and said, "It's all about financial power. What's so impressive about it?" Santiago spoke slowly. "Financial power isn't something everyone can just use, but it looks like we won't have to leave the project department for now." Before long, I walked over and assigned tasks to the group. I said, "I'm going to direct the project department's manpower and resources to you three. You've got to work hard and make significant progress in a short period. I'll say this up front, if you don't do well, get out of here as soon as possible." The three of them nodded seriously. "Don't worry, Deputy Minister, we've got this." These three had always been sidelined, but now they had found someone who understood them, and each of them was full of enthusiasm. After they left, the assistant walked up to me, looking confused. "Big brother, what's the point of all this? Wasting so much money, are you really just trying to clean up the project department? But this is Lou's group's project department. What does it have to do with us?" I smiled faintly and replied, "Of course it's about getting results quickly and entering the core of Lou's group. Only then can we gain access to more information. Also, it'll buy us some time to investigate Makoto's little tricks." The assistant nodded thoughtfully. "I understand now. I'll give it my all." In the following days, the project department developed rapidly. Not only did we get the Paradise Resort in order, but we also took on several projects at once. These developments successfully caught Willow's attention, especially during the next meeting. My calm and decisive demeanor stood out, something no other executive had shown. Most importantly, she felt a sense of familiarity when interacting with me, as if we had met before. At the same time, Makoto couldn't sit still anymore. "Damn it, there's really no one who can stop this guy." He took his phone out from his chest pocket, preparing to replicate his previous actions. But this time, unlike before, it wasn't a direct confrontation. It was a case of trailing and investigating, trying to figure out my background thoroughly. However, the result was that as soon as the car drove off, I noticed. The assistant glanced at the rearview mirror. "Big brother, we're being followed again." I smiled faintly. "Let them follow. Head to the usual spot." Got it. Chapter 24. After arriving at the old town, the little brother quickly lost track of the person he was following. Damn it, where did they go? He was planning to turn around and leave, but just as he made the turn, my car blocked him completely. I pulled him out of the car. "You probably know what happened to those people before. I don't want to waste time talking with you. Tell me who sent you here and what your purpose is." I don't know. I'm just a passerby." "Who are you?" The little brother tried to play dumb, but I pulled a knife out of my pocket. "I see you don't want to talk." Then let's not talk. By the way, do you want your left leg or right leg, or would you prefer to lose both?" I played with the knife, and my seemingly casual tone pierced through the little brother's psychological defenses. "It was President Ito who sent me. He said you were suspicious, and I should follow you to see who you meet after work." "Big brother, I'm just a little errand boy. Please don't make things difficult for me. This has nothing to do with me." The corner of my mouth lifted slightly. I replied, "I won't make things difficult for you, but you have to help me with something." In the following days, I continued to act decisively, and the little brother didn't disappoint. News soon came through. It turned out that Makoto was meeting a mysterious person at a hotel in the evening, and the exact location was provided. I didn't hesitate and immediately drove there. As soon as I saw the mysterious person, my suspicions were instantly confirmed. The assistant said, "Isn't that the financial director? Looks like they've been in cahoots for a long time." I said, "Now you know the direction of the follow-up investigation, right?" The assistant nodded seriously. "I understand now. Big brother, leave it to me." At this point, Makoto had not only failed to find any dirt on me, but I had managed to turn the tables on him during the meeting. I slammed the evidence of his collusion with the financial director onto the table. "This is the exchange between our deputy general manager Ito and the financial director. Take a look. This should open your eyes." The executives immediately began to examine the documents, and it quickly turned into a scathing critique of Makoto and the financial director. "Unbelievable. This is really eating inside and digging outside. My God, if I hadn't seen this, I wouldn't have believed it." Makoto, enraged, pointed a finger at me. "You bastard. You dare stab me in the back." I spread my hands and said, "How can I be stabbing you? This is all on you. If you hadn't acted so shady, would I have anything to use against you? You, damn it, I'm going to fight you." He rolled up his sleeves and was about to make a move, but Willow stopped him. She asked, "Care to explain what these accounts are about?" Naturally, Makoto denied everything. "This has nothing to do with me. I'm being wronged. He's framing me." Willow turned to the financial director. "Let's hear it from you. If you tell the truth, I'll consider giving you a chance." Without hesitation, The financial director immediately sold Makoto out. It was all him pressuring me. I know I was wrong. President Liu, I was just an accomplice. Please spare me. I beg you. The outcome of the meeting was clear. Makoto was stripped of his position as executive vice president and temporarily cut off from cooperation with Liu's group. As for the position of executive vice president, I would take over. After the meeting, Willow sought out Makoto. Although she was furious, she couldn't ignore the fact that he was someone she had chosen. She suppressed her anger. She said, I see you're tired. Go rest for now. Once things calm down, we'll discuss the collaboration between the two big groups. Makoto agreed outwardly, but in his mind, he was already plotting his revenge. On the other side, after temporarily handling the company matters, I headed to the orphanage, but this time, I went as David, since it wasn't the right time to reveal myself. The children at the orphanage were as lively and adorable as always. In their faces, I saw a reflection of my past self. After a bit of playtime, the director called me into his office. He said, there's something I don't know if I should bring up. I smiled faintly. I said, Director, what's between us that you can't say? Just speak your mind. Well, I won't hide it anymore. Do you remember the funds that President Liu donated to the orphanage years ago? I've done some investigating recently and found that part of the funds wasn't used for the children's education and living expenses as intended. Instead, they were secretly diverted. My resources are limited, so I need you to investigate and find out where these funds really went. A flash of malice crossed my eyes when I heard that. If they could embezzle even these funds, that person's conscience must have been eaten by dogs. Don't worry, Director. Leave it to me. Just then, a staff member rushed in. Director, MS. Liu is here to visit the children. Hearing that Willow had arrived, I instinctively thought of leaving, but it was too late. When she saw me, Willow's face was full of surprise. She asked, what are you doing here? I awkwardly cleared my throat. Well, I just thought the children at the orphanage were too pitiful, so I donated some money to them. I came today to check on them. Willow noticed something was off and wanted to ask more questions, but just then, two little children ran over. Big brother, big sister, can you play with us? Willow was about to refuse, but the two children had already pulled her into the yard, and I naturally couldn't escape either. There was nothing we could do but play with the children in the yard. To our surprise, this playtime lasted for several hours, and we didn't realize it until it got dark. Those few hours were also the most relaxed we had been, and they made me reflect on the little moments of the past. But alas, what has passed can never come back. As we were leaving the orphanage, Willow stopped me. I want to ask you something. Have we met somewhere before? I smiled and said, no, I've been abroad. Just recently returned to the country. Maybe it's because I have a common face, so I look like someone you've met. Even though I said that, Willow still couldn't shake the doubt in her mind. After we returned, she had Makoto investigate my real identity. In fact, even if she hadn't said anything, Makoto wouldn't have been idle. But once he started investigating, problems arose. He found out that I had recently been keeping an eye on the orphanage's funds. Not only that, but Pat and the others were also investigating the materials used in the Paradise Resort. The person behind all these issues was the same, Makoto. Damn it, they're forcing me into a corner. Fine, since you want to play, I'll play to the end with you. While he was making his plans, a message suddenly popped up. After a long period of investigation, the truth about my real identity was gradually coming to light. Chapter 25. After seeing the message, Makoto froze for a moment before immediately laughing. Interesting. This is getting more and more interesting. It seems our grudge is about to be settled. He turned and approached Willow, saying he would take her to a place where she could find out David's true identity. Naturally, Willow didn't think twice and obediently got in the car with him. At the same time, Makoto sent me a false lead, revealing the location to me. The assistant furrowed his brow and said, Big brother, I have a bad feeling about this. I smiled slightly and replied, if it's a trap, then it's a trap. We'll have to face it eventually. Let's see what tricks he's trying to play. That said, I still contacted the law enforcement agency beforehand. After all, the chain of evidence was nearly complete, and it was time to close in on them. Now that they were delivering themselves to me, I couldn't afford to miss this opportunity. Makoto had chosen an abandoned factory on the outskirts as the meeting location. Willow, looking around at the dim surroundings, felt uneasy and asked, what are we doing here? Where's David? Makoto smiled and said, don't worry, he'll be here soon. Not long after, I entered the factory alone. When Makoto saw me, he laughed loudly. George, oh George, you really are something. You faked your death, fooled everyone, and now you're making a dramatic return. What a brilliant move. Hearing my name, Willow was shocked. You said what? He's George. Makoto nodded and said with a grin. That's right. This guy fooled all of us. He really thought we were fools. But it doesn't matter, because today, all our grudges will be settled. I sneered. Yes, Even if you didn't want to settle it, I wouldn't let it go. I threw all the evidence on the table, including the issues with the materials used at the Paradise Resort and the embezzlement of funds from the orphanage. There were also some illegal operations and false accounting in the company, all pointing directly at Makoto. I said, finally, I can see what greed truly looks like in you. You really don't know when to be satisfied. I'm curious, though, what do you need so much money for? Are you planning to stuff it all in your coffin when you die? Makoto sneered coldly. You're quick with your investigations, but unfortunately, I'm one step ahead of you. He waved his hand, and dozens of thugs armed with clubs rushed out from all sides. In the blink of an eye, I was surrounded. Willow's heart skipped a beat. What are you going to do? Makoto laughed as he wrapped his arm around her waist. Willow, we have to deal with this guy today, or we'll have no good days left. Willow shook her head repeatedly. No, stop. Don't do anything rash. Makoto smiled and said, stopping is impossible. The arrow is already on the string. It has to be shot. This guy has to die today. He then looked at me. Before you die, is there anything you want to say? I smiled faintly and replied, I advise you not to do anything rash, or you'll regret it. Haha, this is hilarious. Just look at the situation now. Who's going to regret? He waved his hand, and the thugs rushed forward. I took a deep breath and charged into the crowd. My moves were bold and fierce, with no hesitation, and even when surrounded, I fought back fiercely. Willow watched anxiously from a distance, unable to do anything. As time passed, I began to tire and was slowly getting the upper hand. Bang! A muffled thud sounded as one of the thugs slammed a steel rod into my back. I staggered, almost collapsing to the ground. Makoto's lips curled into a faint smile. It's over now. Just as I was about to fall, a gunshot shattered the silence of the factory. Looking over, I saw my assistant, along with law enforcement, rushing in. Armed law enforcement officers quickly surrounded the scene, and these so-called thugs had no choice but to bow their heads obediently in front of them. This was the power of bloodline suppression. The team leader, coldly looking at Makoto, said, You're suspected of organizing a fight and several large-scale fraudulent transactions. Please come with us. Makoto knew full well that once he went with them, his life was effectively ruined. Suddenly, his peripheral vision caught sight of Willow, and he quickly pulled a knife from his chest and held her at knife point. Don't come any closer. If you take one more step, I'll kill her. Willow's face showed no panic, only deep despair and helplessness. She thought about how much she once relied on this man, and now, he was trying to kill her, and the person who truly cared for her had been pushed away. I quickly thought of a plan. Makoto, are you helping me get rid of this enemy? In that case, I have to thank you. You two are no good, so go ahead, and make sure everything ends here today. That way, everyone will be satisfied. Willow bitterly smiled. Go ahead, do it. In the moment when Makoto was distracted, I swiftly moved forward and placed myself between Willow and him. The result was that Makoto's knife was driven into my back, and blood began to pour out. I kicked out forcefully, sending him sprawling to the ground, but my vision grew blurry, and I lost consciousness. Chapter 26. I don't know how long it had been, but I finally regained consciousness, the smell of disinfectant filling my nostrils. When I opened my eyes, my assistant was standing in front of me. Big brother, you've finally woken up. You've been unconscious for 3 days and nights. You scared me to death, I asked. How's the situation? The assistant replied truthfully. It's all been handled. Makoto's been charged with multiple crimes and will spend the rest of his life in a small, dark cell. Ito's group has collapsed, but Lou's group doesn't have a good fate either. Makoto had already turned the whole group into a hollow shell. Now, if no one invests, Lou's group will follow in Ito's footsteps. After a moment of thought, I decided to act. Join forces with other investors and inject capital into Lou's group, but don't use my name. Just do it under the name David. Understood. Thanks to my intervention, Lou's group quickly overcame the crisis, but Willow resigned as president and transferred all her shares to me. According to my assistant, Willow decided to leave South City and devote herself to charity work in a remote mountain area. After thinking it over, I decided to send her off. At the airport, Willow was as radiant as ever, but compared to before, her face held more gentleness and a sense of relief. She said, George, I admit I was wrong before. I've wronged you, and I don't deserve to ask for your forgiveness. I betrayed you. I believed Makoto's lies. It was my own actions that led us into this situation. So, I want to build schools for children in the mountains. I hope this is a way to atone for my mistakes and find redemption within myself. I didn't say much more. I stepped forward and gave her a hug. I said, I wish you a safe journey. As I watched Willow's figure fade into the distance, I let go of the hatred in my heart and turned to embrace my new life. This wasn't just Willow's redemption. It was my redemption as well.